Mara Ellison, arrived in Dry Cedar, believing she was about to become a wife. Instead, Reed Vale had her by the elbow beside the freight wagon, and he was already deciding where to put her. "She came under your name," Reed called across the dust. "Mail order bride for Hollow Star. If Asa will not take her, I have room at the line shack." Mara pulled her arm free. She was 27, with stage dust on her brown skirt and one carpetbag held close in both hands. She had spent 6 days crossing hard country because a man had written that Hollow Star needed light in the east window. He had written that he had 2 young nieces and a house gone cold with grief. He had written that a woman would be respected there. Now Asa Vale stepped into the station yard with dust on his coat, a black hat in one hand, and no welcome in his face. He stopped between Mara and Reed. "I never ordered a wife," Asa said. The word struck Mara in front of everyone. Her mouth tightened. The stage driver looked down at his reins. A woman in the ticket doorway looked away toward the stove as if the stove had suddenly become important. Reed smiled. "Then she is nobody's, and nobody's woman cannot stand in Dry Cedar after dark. I will put her somewhere useful." "You will not put her anywhere," Asa said. Mara looked at him with one hard question in her face. Not hope, not trust, just the need to know which man had lied. "I have your letters," she said. Asa's jaw worked once. He looked at Reed, then back to her. "No letter asking marriage came from me." The woman in the doorway cleared her throat. "I cannot keep her here, Asa. The women's room is promised." "Promised to who?" Asa asked. "To passengers." Myra looked past the woman through the half-open door. One iron cot, one folded quilt, no passenger. "Your name?" Mara asked. "Cora Bell," the woman said too fast. Reed stepped closer. "Do not make town gossip out of this. The buyer from Latham Ridge is already asking whether Hollow Star has lost its head. A bride ordered and refused in the same hour will not help you." There it was. Mara saw it before she understood all of it. This was not only a cruel joke, it was pressure. Reed had brought her here to force Asa's hand. Asa heard it too. He turned to Mara. "Did he touch your money?" Her fingers tightened on the carpetbag handle. "Not yet." "Good, keep it." Reed laughed. "Listen to him. He will not marry you, but he wants to give orders." Asa ignored him. "Mrs. Ellison, I cannot undo what brought you here in this minute. I can give you 3 choices that do not belong to him. You may stay in Dry Cedar if Mrs. Bell opens that room. You may take supper money from me and wait for tomorrow's stage. Or you may ride to Hollow Star under paid guest terms with separate board and work if you choose it. No marriage claim. No debt. No line shack." Cora's face reddened. "Asa, I told you the room is promised." "Then say in front of her who promised it." Cora said nothing. The driver shifted on the box. A man on the freight porch stopped tying a sack and listened. Mara looked from Asa to Reed. She had no family waiting behind her. She had no safe work ahead. If she stayed in Dry Cedar, Cora Bell would turn her out before lamplight. If she went with Reed, she already knew what kind of room he meant by useful. If she rode with Asa, she rode with a man who had just broken her last hope, but had also put his body between her and the wagon. "Paid guest terms," she said, "spoken where everyone can hear." Something changed in Asa's eyes. Respect maybe, pain maybe. He nodded once. $2 for the week whether you stay the week or not," he said. "You keep your own purse. You eat with the household if you want, or alone if you do not. You sleep in the old schoolroom beside my office. My nieces sleep in the main house with Mrs. Voss, and I sleep in the bunkhouse until you decide where you are safest. Friday's southbound stage remains open. I will not ask you for marriage. I will not let any man call you mine." Reed's smile thinned. "You just spent winter feed in front of witnesses." "No," Asa said. "I spent $2 to keep a woman from being taken under a lie." "And the Ridge buyer?" "Can wait." Mara heard the cost in that answer. She did not know what ridge money meant yet, but Reed did, and so did Cora. The whole station seemed to hold its breath. Asa lifted Mara's carpetbag only after she gave a small nod. He carried it to his wagon and set it at her feet instead of behind the seat where he could control it. Then he climbed up beside her, leaving space wide enough that no one could mistake the ride for possession. As the wagon turned from Dry Cedar, Reed called after them, "The east window still needs light, cousin." Mara went cold. Asa heard the words too, but he did not know why her hands tightened. He only looked ahead at the pale road and said, "He has no right to any window in my house." Hollow Star lay 3 miles beyond Dry Cedar, where the prairie lifted into low ridges and cedar breaks cut the wind. The ranch yard was not poor, but it had the look of a place run by people who avoided certain rooms. Shirts hung stiff and forgotten on the line. A slate with school sums leaned against a rain barrel. 2 small boots sat beside the kitchen step, caked in old mud. 2 children watched from the shade. Ruth was 9, tall and wary. Elsie was 6, with 2 uneven braids and a rag doll by 1 foot. Behind them stood Mrs. Voss, a thin, older widow hired for daytime help, with flour on 1 sleeve and worry in her face. "This is Mrs. Ellison," Asa said before any child could speak. "She is a guest under paid terms. She is not here to be your mother." Ruth stared at Mara's dusty skirt. Elsie stared at Asa. Mrs. Voss let out a breath that was almost a thank you. "Supper is thin." "Thin is still supper," Asa said. "Where is Reed?" "Bunkhouse," Mrs. Voss said, "telling the men you brought trouble home." "He was early." "He usually is when he starts it himself." Mara looked at Asa. He gave Mrs. Voss a warning glance, but not a cruel one. The older woman pressed her lips together and took Mara's carpetbag only after Mara released it. "The old schoolroom has a cot," Mrs. Voss said. "It is clean. No one sleeps through that wall from the office. If you want the latch checked, I will check it in front of you." "Thank you," Mara said. Asa looked at her then, and for the first time since the station, the hard public line went out of his face. "Mrs. Voss speaks plain. If any term I gave you changes without your consent, you tell her, then me." Reed came out of the bunkhouse before Mara could answer. 3 hands trailed behind him, young men with hats low and curiosity plain. Reed's boots were too clean for a ranch yard. That told Mara he liked giving orders more than doing work. "Asa," Reed called. "Latham's man rides in tomorrow noon. He says if you bring a mail-order scandal into the yard, the ridge price drops. Then he can ride back with a lower opinion and no ridge." One of the hands looked up. Reed spread his arms. "You all hear him. Winter feed against pride. 2 motherless children under that roof, and he would rather keep a stranger in the schoolroom than make an honest bargain." Ruth stiffened on the step. Asa took 1 step forward. "Say it again, and you can sleep off Hollow Star land tonight." Reed's eyes sparked. He wanted Asa angry. He wanted him loud. He wanted Mara to see a grief-broken man who could be steered. Mara had known men like that in boarding rooms and agency halls. Men who used another person's pain like a bridle. She stepped down from the wagon before Asa could move again. "Mr. Reed Vale, if you mean me by stranger, speak to me, not over me." The yard quieted. Reed looked her over without being crude enough for Asa to strike him. "You traveled all this way to be a wife. Now he calls you guest. You do not find that strange." "I find false letters stranger." "Letters can be misunderstood. Names cannot." Reed smiled. "A borrowed bride is still a debt, Mrs. Ellison. Someone will have to pay for you." Mara felt the insult land. Borrowed bride. The hands heard it. Mrs. Voss heard it. Ruth heard it before Mrs. Voss could send her inside. Mara kept her voice steady. "I was not borrowed. I was lied to." Reed's smile sharpened. "You are tired. The schoolroom will feel cold by midnight." "Cold is not the same as claimed." Asa's gaze flicked to her. It was quick, but Mara saw it. He had expected tears, pleading, maybe shame. He had not expected her to stand in his yard with dust on her cuffs and answer Reed like each word had to be weighed before she spent it. That look warmed her more than she wanted it to. Mrs. Voss touched Ruth's shoulder and sent both children inside. The men drifted away, all but one broad-shouldered hand near the water barrel. He watched Reed with dislike he was trying to hide. "Joss," Asa said, "put Mrs. Ellison's team trunk in the schoolroom when the stage freight brings it." "She has no trunk," Reed said. Myra turned. "How would you know?" Reed's face did not change, but the hand near the barrel lifted his head. "Cora said so," Reed answered. Myra held his eyes 1 second longer. "Of course." Joss waited until Reed crossed toward the horse lot before he spoke. His voice was low enough that only Myra and the wash line heard it. "He did know about the trunk." Myra turned. "Mrs. Bell wired no such thing," Joss said, then swallowed. "I mean, she told him when the stage was due, but he knew you traveled light before the stage came in. He said a woman with one bag has nowhere to run back to." The words landed in Myra's stomach like cold iron. "Will you say that in front of Asa?" Joss looked toward the bunkhouse. "Reed controls who draws winter work. My mother takes my pay in Dry Cedar. If he cuts me loose, she loses her room." Mara could have despised him. She did not. Fear had many faces. "Then do not spend your courage too early," she said, "but do not pretend you have none." Joss looked startled. "There may come a minute," she said, "when the truth only needs one more voice. If that minute comes, decide before it arrives which kind of man you want to be." He nodded once, not bravely but seriously. That was enough for now. That night's supper was beans, bread, and dried apples stretched thin. Mara ate at the end of the kitchen bench, not at Asa's side. Ruth asked no questions. Elsie started to ask one and was hushed before the words formed. Asa did not force talk, and Mara was grateful, but the silence pressed on the table until every spoon sounded guilty. After supper, Asa carried his ledger and rifle from the office into the bunkhouse. Mara watched from the schoolroom doorway as he moved the things himself. He did not ask a hand to do it. He did not make a show. He laid the rifle in the bunkhouse rack, shut the office door, and gave Mrs. Voss the office key. "She can use the office in daylight," he said. "You hold this tonight." Mrs. Voss nodded. Mara stood by the cot. The old schoolroom smelled faintly of chalk. A map of Texas hung crooked on one wall. The cot had clean blankets, a washstand, and a candle set inside a tin plate. The latch was simple, but it caught firm. Mrs. Voss tested it twice. "He did not have to give up the office," Mara said. "No," Mrs. Voss answered. "He did have to prove he meant what he said." The older woman seemed ready to leave, but Mara stopped her. "Did Asa ever write to a bride agency?" "No." "You are certain?" "His wife, Clara, died 3 years ago. Her sister and husband died last winter and the girls came here. Folks said he needed a woman. He said children were not a hole you stuffed with the nearest lonely person." Mrs. Voss's face softened. "He has been hard to live near since then, but he was right about that." Mara sat on the cot. She wanted to hate Asa for not being the man in the letters. It would have been easier than admitting the man in the letters had been built out of pieces of him, stolen by someone who knew where he hurt. "The letters said Hollow Star needed light in the east window," she said. Mrs. Voss went still. "Who would know that phrase?" "Clara used to set a lamp in the east window when Asa rode late. After she died, he would not let anyone light that side of the house." Mara's throat tightened. "Reed said it at the station." Mrs. Voss closed her eyes. "Then he wrote them." The answer was not surprise. It was confirmation. Myra slept badly and woke before dawn to Reed's voice outside the schoolroom wall. "You cannot keep her here without marrying her, Asa. Dry Cedar will eat this alive." Asa's reply was low. "Dry Cedar can chew slow." Latham's man will not. Sign the Ridge option today, take the money, send her south. I will say I misunderstood the order. You will say nothing until I know what you did. What I did, Reed laughed softly. I kept your house from sinking. Ruth nearly took the little one to the creek alone last week because Mrs. Voss was sick and you were at the south fence. You need help. You need someone under that roof. You just hate that I solved it. Mara sat up. A woman is not a rope you throw over a broken beam, Asa said. No, she is a wife if you have sense, and a scandal if you do not. Boots scraped. Mara went to the small window. Reed stood near the office steps, one hand on the rail. Asa stood below him in shirt sleeves, shoulders rigid. Reed lowered his voice, but Mara still heard. The girls can be sent to Aunt Lydia in Amarillo if you prove you cannot manage. Would you like that? Ruth crying on a freight bench. Elsie asking why Uncle Asa chose a borrowed bride and pried over them. Asa moved so fast Mara thought he would hit him. He stopped one hand short of Reed's coat. Reed's grin returned. There he is. That is the man the buyer needs to see. Mara opened the schoolroom door. It is also the man who stopped before he touched you. Both men turned. She stepped onto the porch in her travel dress, hair braided, boots laced. If you threaten those children again where I can hear it, I will ask you to repeat it in front of them. Then we will see which man looks unfit. Reed's eyes sharpened. You are bold for a woman with no place. I have a place until Friday, paid terms. Paid by whom? A man who just lost the Ridge buyer. Asa said, go saddle for the north fence, Reed. I am foreman. Then hear an order. Reed looked at the bunkhouse, where two men had stepped out to listen. He gave a short bow, almost mocking, and walked away. Asa did not apologize to Mara. She liked that he did not waste the moment on words that would make him feel cleaner and change nothing. Instead he said, you heard enough to know the danger. He means to press until I either marry you to quiet talk or send you off looking ruined. Both would serve him. And the Ridge sale. Latham wants the Ridge because the railroad spur will push cattle that way by spring. Reed found the buyer and expects a commission. You need the money. Yes. Plain, no pride around it. That mattered more than if he had claimed he could do without. Then I am expensive trouble, Mara said. Asa looked at the pale line of sun behind the cedars. No, the lie is expensive. You are the person it was tied to. For a moment neither spoke. From the kitchen came Elsie's small voice asking whether Mrs. Ellison knew sums. Ruth answered, do not ask her things. She is leaving. Mara flinched before she could stop herself. Asa saw, they are not your work. Children ask before grown people dare. They are not your work, he repeated firmer. If you stay 1 hour or 1 year, it will not be because 2 children looked at you hungry. That should have settled her. Instead it opened a dangerous tenderness. Not toward the children first, though they needed gentleness. Toward the man who would rather look cruel than buy a woman's pity with them. At breakfast Mara asked for work. Asa set down his cup. Reed, who had returned from the north fence suspiciously fast, smiled like a man watching a trap close. What kind? Asa asked. The kind covered by the $2 if I leave Friday and paid separate if I stay longer. Mrs. Voss needs help sorting school lessons and household accounts. I know figures and copying. I am not a cook for hire, and I am not a mother for hire. Ruth Spoon stopped. Reed leaned back. Household accounts, fine name for wife practice. Myra looked at him. Fine name for work a foreman should not control. Joss coughed into his coffee. Asa hid nothing of his approval. Mrs. Voss. The widow nodded. I can use her by noon. Then by noon, Asa said. 4 bits a day after the first week if she chooses to remain in that role. 4 bits, Reed snapped, for copying sums. For work I want done. Reed looked around the table. Men hear this. Winter feed is short, but Hollow Star can pay a borrowed bride to play schoolmistress. Mara held her cup with both hands and looked at every man at the table. Borrowed things are returned to the owner, Mr. Vale. I have none. The room went still. Assa's voice went quiet. Finish breakfast outside. Reed stood slowly. You will need me when Latham rides in. Then I will be disappointed with company. The work was not gentle enough to be charity. Mrs. Voss set Mara at the small desk under the schoolroom window with 3 stacks, household accounts, lesson slates, and a list of unpaid supply charges Reed had handled for 6 months. Mara copied sums until her fingers cramped. She found 2 arithmetic mistakes in Mrs. Voss's favor and 4 in Reed's, all small enough to be called carelessness if a person wanted peace more than truth. When she took the corrected list to Assa at the South Corral, he was tightening a rail with Joss. The wind pulled at his shirt sleeves. He had dust on his jaw and a fresh scrape across one knuckle. He read the numbers without speaking. I did not look for wrong, Mara said. I looked for balance. Wrong often hides where balance is supposed to be. That sounds like a man who has found it before. He folded the paper and ignored it longer than I should have because grief made quiet easier. Joss looked away, giving them what privacy a ranch yard allowed. Mara glanced toward the house. Ruth was showing Elsie how to carry kindling in smaller bundles. Neither child looked toward her for rescue. That helped. It also hurt in a clean way. Your wife, Mara said carefully, did she keep these accounts? She kept me honest in them. Assa rested one arm on the rail. After Clara died, Reed offered to handle Ridge buyers and outside charges. I let him because every paper on that desk felt like proof the house had lost its voice. You did not order a bride, Mara said, but you did leave empty places where a man like Reed could write one in. It was a hard thing to say to a man who had protected her. She expected him to stiffen. Instead, he looked at the corrected numbers in his hand. Yes. The answer put heat behind her eyes. Not romance. Not yet. Something sturdier and more dangerous. A man willing to say yes to his own failure could not be handled the way Reed handled him. Assa tucked the paper into his vest. That is twice today you did work that changed the ground under him. Then pay me by the day. I intend to. His mouth almost smiled. Mara almost answered it. Then a shadow crossed the corral rail. Reed stood close enough to have heard the last line. Latham's buyer was still at the far gate, speaking to a hand, so Reed kept his voice low and cruel. Careful with numbers, Mrs. Ellison, he said. A woman who finds too many mistakes can be called a thief before supper. Joss looked down. Assa's jaw tightened. Say that again with the buyer listening. Reed smiled. No need. A stain travels faster when people whisper it. Mara understood then that Reed did not only fear the truth. He was already preparing a name for her. If you call me thief, she said, bring the book, I will bring the sums. Reed's smile faded. Assa stepped closer but not in front of her. Go see to the buyer. Gladly, Reed said. Somebody here should care about Winter. He walked away, and whatever had nearly begun between Assa and Mara had to wait under dust and threat. The first real turn came that afternoon, not through a paper or a confession, but through a sentence Reed should not have known. Mara was helping Mrs. Voss sort old lesson slates under the shade when Elsie dropped a pencil into the dust and burst into tears too large for the accident. Mara crouched, but did not touch the child without permission. You are tired, she said. Elsie shook her head hard. Her small face was red and her fingers crushed the rag doll's dress. Uncle Reed says if you go, Aunt Lydia takes us. Ruth grabbed Elsie's hand. Hush. Mara looked toward the corrals. Assa was not there. Reed stood near the wash line speaking with Joss. He should not say that to you, Mara said. Ruth's chin came up. He says Uncle Assa cannot keep women from leaving, He says if you leave, folks will know this house is not fit for girls. Elsie whispered, "He said I should ask you to stay pretty. He said crying works if I do it right." Mara felt a clean anger move through her. Not loud, not wild, clean. "Listen to me," she said. "No grown man should put that job in your hands. Not ever." Ruth's eyes filled and hardened at the same time. She was a child trying to be a locked gate. "Your Uncle Asa told me you were not my work," Mara said. "That means he loves you enough not to use you." Ruth looked toward the wash line and Mara saw fear there, not of hunger, of being made responsible for everyone else's choices. Reed called from the wash line, "Careful, Mrs. Ellison. The east window promise works better if the children like you." Mara stood. The world seemed to narrow to the sound of shirts snapping in the wind. Reed had said it lightly, as if mocking a romance phrase, but the words were exact. Not a lamp in the window, not a pretty promise. The east window promise. Only the letters had used those words. Asa had not known them at the station. Mrs. Voss had recognized them from Clara, not from Asa's hand. Joss saw Mara's face and stopped working the pump handle. Reed realized half a breath too late that he had spent the wrong coin in public. "What promise?" Mara asked. "Your letters," he said smoothly. "I did not show you my letters." "Cora spoke of them. Cora read them. Women talk." Mara took one step closer. "Then Cora can say so." Reed shrugged. "Ask her Friday when you go." He walked away before Asa returned, but he had left a trail. Mara watched Joss lower his eyes and knew he had heard enough to be frightened, not enough to be brave. That evening, Asa found her behind the old schoolroom with the letters spread on a crate. She had not wanted to show them. Each page shamed her now. Each careful sentence reached toward a man who had not reached back. But if she hid them, Reed would keep the shape of the lie. Asa stopped 10 feet away. "You do not have to show me." "I know." "Then why are they out?" "Because he said a phrase from them today." Asa's face changed. "Which phrase?" "The east window promise." For a moment, he looked like the ground had gone from under his boots. "Mrs. Voss told me what it meant," Mara said. "Clara set that lamp when I rode late." He looked toward the house, where the east window stayed dark though the rest glowed gold. "I never wrote that to anyone." Reed knew it. He was here then, before Clara died, before he decided my grief was an open cash box. Mara folded the letters. "If I accuse him with only that, he will say Cora told him." "Cora may have." "Then Cora must pay too." Asa studied her. "You have a plan." "Not yet, a direction." She handed him the top letter. "Do you want to read what he used?" He did not take it right away. "It may shame you." "It already did." "Not to me." The words were quiet, and because they were quiet, they struck deep. Mara held out the letter until he accepted it. Asa read 3 lines, then stopped. His hand tightened on the page. He wrote of the girls. Yes. He wrote they needed a mother. He wrote they needed a woman who would not mind being second to a memory. Asa closed his eyes. Mara almost apologized, which would have been wrong. She had not wounded him. Reed had. "Mrs. Ellison," Asa said, opening his eyes, "if I have made you feel like a tool in my grief by bringing you here, I will put you on tomorrow, stage myself, and pay as far as Abilene. And if I do not want Reed to win, that is not your debt. No, but it is now my name he used, my hope, my miles, my arrival in that yard." She looked at the letter in his hand. "I came here to marry a man who did not exist. I would like to leave knowing which man did." Asa's eyes held hers. The pull between them was not soft. It had anger around it. It had cost, but it was real. He saw her not as a solution, not as a scandal, not as a mistake to manage. He saw the woman who had crossed 1,000 miles and still stood upright. "Then we do it your way," he said. Not rescue first. Not unless you ask. She almost smiled. You will find that difficult. I already do. They stood with the false letters between them while the ranch settled into evening noise. A pan rang in the kitchen. One of the girls laughed, then stopped herself too quickly. From the bunkhouse came Reed's voice, easy and confident, telling a story to men who needed wages more than clean consciences. Asa looked toward that sound. If Reed wrote those letters, he meant to make me choose between two shames. Marry you fast and look like a man who ordered a mother for children, or refuse you and look like a man who ruined a woman. There is a third shame, Mara said. He looked back at her, letting him decide what either of us is worth. Asa breathed out through his nose, almost a laugh and almost pain. You speak like a woman who has had practice. A woman who answers a bride advertisement at 27 has usually heard every price put on her. Too old to be first choice. Too alone to bargain. Useful if grateful. Respectable if quiet. She took the letter back from him. The man in these pages seemed to offer none of that. That is why I came. And I was not him. No, she folded the paper. But you might be better than him because a made-up man pays nothing for his kindness. Asa did not reach for her. He only stood there, receiving the words. Mara was grateful for the distance. If he had touched her then, even kindly, grief and gratitude might have tangled into something neither of them could trust. Tomorrow, he said, Purcell comes for the Ridge answer. Then tomorrow Reed will be hungry. Yes. Good, Mara said. Hungry men reach too far. By the third day, Reed stopped pretending. He came into the yard after dinner with Latham's buyer, a narrow man named Purcell, and Cora Bell in the back of his wagon. Cora would not meet Mara's eyes. Before they arrived, Asa had already made his own costly move. He rode to the north pasture at first light and came back with the Ridge option unsigned, folded once, and held in plain sight. He did not show it to Mara as proof. He showed it to Joss and the two oldest hands. If Latham wants Ridge grass, Asa said, he comes when Hollow Star is not being blackmailed. One hand cursed under his breath. The other looked toward the hay shed. Everyone knew what it meant. More short rations for stock. More work cutting cedar browse if snow came early. Less cash before spring. Asa let them see the cost and did not sweeten it. Any man who wants winter work under Reed's promise can go before noon, he said. No shame in needing wages, but no man takes Hollow Star pay under a lie and calls it loyalty. No one moved at first. That was not victory. It was a waiting room for one. Mara watched from the porch and felt the weight of every unpaid hour, every family in Dry Cedar tied to these men's wages. Clean choices were rare on the frontier. Most came with hunger attached. Joss finally stepped forward. My mother needs my pay. I know, Asa said. Then I stay where pay is honest. The other hands did not cheer. Cheering would have made it too easy. But one by one they went back to work. Asa had bought no devotion. He had simply paid enough truth for them to stand on. Mara carried that image with her when Reed's wagon rolled in after dinner. It kept her from shaking when she saw Cora in the back and the wage envelope in Reed's vest. Asa was at the south corral with Joss in two hands, mending a rail. Mara stood beside Mrs. Voss on the porch with copied account tallies under her arm. The girls were inside with a neighbor woman Asa had paid to sit with them for the afternoon. That was proof before the climax. He could seek help without turning Mara into it. Reed lifted a sealed wage envelope from his vest. Mrs. Ellison, Asa asked me to hold this until your conduct was settled. Mara came down the steps. No, he did not. Purcell looked uncomfortable. Cora looked at the dust. Reed held the envelope higher. A woman under a cloud does not handle Hollow Star money. Asa crossed the yard. Put that down. Or what? You strike me in front of the buyer. Prove the point. Joss set his hammer on the rail. The sound was small, but every man heard it. Mara kept walking until she stood close enough to read her own name on the envelope. Mr. Vale, if that is mine, give it to me. Reed smiled. Which Mr. Vale? The one who wrote the letters. The yard went quiet. Asa understood then. Mara had not told him when she would spring the trap because she had been right about him. Rescue first came too easily to him. Reed's smile widened. Careful, you may not like the answer. I know the answer, Mara said. But I want you to say it before Mr. Purcell, Cora, Joss, and the men whose wages you keep mentioning. Asa wrote you. Then ask him what he promised about the east window. Asa did not move. Reed laughed. This is foolish. Ask him. Purcell frowned. What is she talking about? Cora whispered, Reed. That whisper did more than a shout. It told everyone she knew. Reed turned on her. Be quiet. Mara's voice cut in. The man who wrote me said Hollow Star needed light in the east window. He said Clara would not mind if another woman kept it. Asa did not know that phrase when you spoke it at the station. You knew it. You used it again at the wash line. Tell them how. Reed's face hardened. Cora read the letters. Cora flinched. I read the outside direction, not inside. You will lie now. Joss stepped forward, pale under his tan. I heard you dictate one. Reed swung toward him. You heard nothing. I heard you tell Cora to write gentle, because a woman who wanted children would travel farther. The words landed hard. Mrs. Voss made a sound in her throat. One of the hands dropped the rail peg he was holding. It struck the dirt and rolled. Purcell took one full step back from Reed. Cora began to shake. Asa went still in a way that frightened Mara more than anger. Reed saw it and made his last move. He grabbed Mara's wage envelope in both hands and tore it open, scattering coins into the dust. There, he said, paid, take your charity and go. Hollow Star does not need a borrowed bride with a clever mouth. Mara did not bend for the coins. No, she said, her voice shook then steadied. I was not borrowed, I was not bought, I was lied to, and every man here just heard who spent me. No one moved. She pointed at the coins in the dirt. Hollow Star does not need a bride ordered by a coward. It needs men who do not use children to buy women and do not use women to sell land. Purcell stepped farther from Reed. You told me the widower ordered her and lost nerve. Because he did, Reed snapped. Asaph finally moved. He did not strike Reed. He walked past him, knelt in the dust, and picked up the scattered coins one by one. The whole yard watched him do it. He placed the coins in Mara's palm, one after another, until Reed's insult had been turned back into wages. Then Asaph stood. Reed Vale, he said, you are done as foreman of Hollow Star. Reed barked a laugh. You cannot run this place without me. I have been running it around you for a year. The men answer to me. Asa looked at Joss. Do they? Joss swallowed. Then he took off the small brass tally token Reed had given crew leaders and dropped it at Asa's feet. Not after this, Joss said. Another hand did the same, then another. The tokens hit dirt one by one. No one spoke over the sound. Reed's eyes moved from token to token. You fools will go hungry when he loses the Ridge money. Purcell adjusted his cuffs. There is no Ridge commission after this. Mr. Latham does not pay men who poison a seller's house before negotiation. I will tell him the option failed because his local man was unreliable. Reed lunged for him, but Asa caught Reed's arm and turned him hard enough to stop him without breaking anything. That is your last defense, Asa said. Threaten the buyer too. Reed jerked free. She will still leave. You think she wants a house full of grief and 2 children who are not hers. Then he reached for the place he thought would still wound. Ask her what she came for. Ask her if she did not pack a wedding dress. Ask her if she did not read those letters at night and imagine your table, your name, your hand reaching for hers. Assa's hand tightened, but he did not move. Mara felt every eye in the yard turn toward her. The words were meant to make her small, to drag a private hope into the dust. They almost did. She had packed a blue dress. She had imagined a table. She had imagined a name spoken without pity. None of that was a crime, unless shame made it one. She lifted her chin. I came to be married honestly. That was not foolish. You made it false. That is yours, not mine. Cora covered her mouth. Reed's face darkened. No decent man will want a woman everyone knows traveled for one husband and bargained with another. Assa stepped beside Mara, still not in front. I am standing right here. Then you are a bigger fool than I thought. No, Assa said. Just done letting you name decency for this yard. Purcell looked from Assa to Mara, then at Reed. Mr. Reed Vale, if Latham asks, I will say the only indecent bargain I saw was yours. Mara answered before Assa could. I may leave. That is the difference between me and your lies. Cora began to cry. Myra turned to her. No. Cora froze. You do not get to cry before you pay back what you took. Cora wiped her face with shaking fingers. I have the agency commission in my cash box. And the room. Cora looked at Assa, then Mara. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a station key. Her hand shook so badly the key clicked against her ring. She held it out in front of everyone. The room was empty, Cora said. Mrs. Voss stepped down from the porch. Say it plain. Cora's face crumpled, but she spoke louder. The women's room was empty when Mara Ellison arrived. I locked it because Reed paid me to make her desperate. The stage driver, who had brought Purcell's extra freight and lingered near the wagon, stared at Cora as if she had become smaller in the sunlight. Cora kept the key out. He said if Assa refused her and town would not keep her, she would have to go to Hollow Star or the Line Shack. He said frightened women agree faster. Every man in the yard heard it. Every woman heard it. The confession did not float away as gossip. It had a key in it, a locked door, a paid lie. Mrs. Voss's face went flat with disgust. Assa said, you will refund her commission and pay 2 nights station room money into her hand. Cora nodded quickly, yes. And Dry Cedar women stranded at your station. Get that room before freight men, until the circuit agent hears of this. Cora's mouth opened, then shut. That was public face. That was money. That was more than shame. Reed backed toward his wagon. You cannot exile blood. I can remove a foreman, Assa said. I can close the Line Shack to you. I can tell every ranch between here and Amarillo exactly how you ordered a woman under my name. Reed looked at Mara then, hatred bare. All this for a bride he did not want. Assa stepped beside Mara, not in front of her. No, for a woman you thought would be easy to spend. Reed had no answer left that did not make him smaller. He climbed into his wagon. No hand moved to help him hitch the spare team. He drove out of Hollow Star with his foreman blanket rolled behind him and no one calling him back. The fallout did not feel like victory at first. It felt like the moment after a storm when every loose board can be seen. Cora paid the commission and room money from a cash box Mrs. Voss made her open on the porch. The coins went into Mara's hand, not Assa's. Purcell rode out to carry his report to Latham. Joss and the hands gathered Reed's tally tokens and put them in a nail keg by the corral because no one wanted them in a pocket anymore. Assa stood apart while it happened. Mara saw the set of his shoulders. He had won and winter had become harder. The Ridge money was gone for now. Reed's work would fall on men already tired. Dry Cedar would talk anyway. She walked to him after Cora left. You lost money because of me, she said. I lost money because Reed lied. And because I stayed. You stayed to tell the truth. I also stayed because I wanted to see who you were when truth cost you. He looked at her then. The yard noise seemed to move away. And he asked. She could have answered kindly and safely. Instead, she answered honestly. "You are slower than I expected." His mouth twitched. "And better," she said. That almost broke him, not into tears. Assad did not seem like a man who could afford them easily, but into a silence with no armor in it. Ruth came to the porch, then stopped. Elsie stood behind her, clutching the rag doll under her chin. Mara saw the old danger rising. Two children looked toward her at the exact wrong moment, needing so much that any soft-hearted woman could mistake need for a calling. Assad saw it too. He turned before Mara could speak. "Mrs. Voss, send word to Mrs. Hanley tonight. If she will take the monthly child lessons and afternoon care we discussed last spring, I will meet her price." Ruth's face changed. "You said it cost too much." "It does," Assad said. "We will pay it." Elsie's lip trembled. "Is Mrs. Ellison going?" Assad crouched so he was not speaking over them. "Mrs. Ellison will decide what Mrs. Ellison does. You and Ruth will not be used to hold her." Ruth looked at Mara with fierce, wet eyes. "I did not mean to." Mara crossed the yard and knelt near her, leaving enough space for Ruth to choose the last step. "I know. Uncle Reed said if we were good, you might stay." Then he put a heavy thing in small hands. Mara glanced at Assad. "Your uncle just took it back." Ruth did not hug her. Mara was glad. A hug right then would have made a pretty ending and a dishonest one. Instead, Ruth nodded once, like a serious person accepting a fair contract, and took Elsie inside. That was the receipt Mara needed before any courtship words. Not children choosing her. Not a man offering her a house because he could not bear an empty one. A grown man making sure the children would be cared for even if she walked away. The Friday stage came 2 days later. Assad hitched the Hollow Star wagon himself and drove Mara to Dry Cedar before breakfast. Her carpetbag sat beside her knees. Her purse was heavier by Cora's refund and her wages. Her letters lay folded inside, not destroyed. She wanted to remember how a lie had sounded, so she would know truth when it cost something. At the station, Cora opened the women's room before Mara asked. A mother with a tired baby sat inside by the stove, drinking coffee Cora had not charged for. Cora looked at Mara, ashamed but upright. "The room is open," Cora said. "Good," Mara answered. "No forgiveness, no cruelty, just the cost doing its work." The southbound stage stood ready. The driver lifted Mara's carpetbag to the platform. Assad did not stop him. "Abilene fare is paid if you want it," Assad said. "Cora's refund covers more if you choose farther." "And if I choose Hollow Star?" His hands tightened on the reins, then loosened. "Then I would ask what role you choose before I ask anything else." Mara looked toward the road back to the ranch. "Household accounts for pay until Mrs. Hanley begins. Lessons if Ruth asks and I agree. No mothering by bargain. No marriage by rumor." "Yes." "My own money." "Yes." "If you speak of Clara, you speak because you want me to know you, not because you need me to replace her." The pain crossed his face cleanly. "Yes." The driver called, boarding south. Mara touched the side of the stage but did not climb, then asked the other question. Assad removed his hat. Around them, Dry Cedar pretended not to listen and failed. "Mara Ellison," he said, voice rough but steady, "if you return to Hollow Star today, may I court you properly, slow enough to honor what was done wrong, plain enough that no one mistakes it for need, free enough that Friday's stage or any Friday after it remains yours to take." She looked at the man who had knelt in the dust for her wages, given up money to protect her choice, and hired help for his children before asking for her heart. She had come to marry a stranger built from lies. She was not leaving because the real man was harder, sadder, and better. "Yes," she said, "but not because you ordered me." His eyes warmed. "No." "And not because your house needs me." "No." Mara took her carpetbag back from the driver herself. Then take me home to my work, Asa Vale. After that, you may call on me like a man with patience." He laughed once, soft with disbelief, and helped her into the wagon without taking the carpetbag from her hand. At Hollow Star, Mrs. Hanley was already in the yard with Ruth and Elsie beside her, discussing lesson hours. The children looked at Mara, but Asa spoke first. "Mrs. Ellison has work of her own," he said, "and I have asked to court her." Ruth considered that. Did she say yes? Mara answered for herself. She did. Elsie smiled, but Ruth only nodded, solemn and relieved. The children went back to Mrs. Hanley because their world no longer depended on pulling an answer from Mara's face. That afternoon, Mara carried the Coppet accounts to the corral rail where Asa was assigning Reed's old duties among 3 men instead of giving one man too much power again. He made room for her beside him, not behind, not inside the house, beside him in the working part of the ranch where choices had weight. "Tomorrow," Mara said, "I start with the feed tallies." "Tomorrow," Asa said, "I will be here when you do." The east window stayed dark that night. Mara left it that way. That light had been stolen once, and she would not let anyone steal it again. Instead, she set her own lamp in the schoolroom window, beside the accounts she was paid to keep, and the carpetbag she still kept within reach. Across the yard, Asa saw the light and stopped beside the corral. He did not come to claim it. He did not turn it into a promise she had not made. He only removed his hat, nodded once, and went back to the work. Mara smiled, dipped her pen, and wrote Hollow Star's feed count in her own clear hand.